Welcome to today's video. In today's video, we'll be discussing the latest news going on in the Russian-Ukraine war. If you find this video interesting, please make sure to like, comment your thoughts down below, and subscribe. It really helps me out in the algorithm, and I would appreciate it. Anyway, let's start off with Kharkiv, where it is getting very heated, very fast. As you guys know, 3 days ago, the Russians launched this offensive in Kharkiv. A lot of people that I've talked to don't really like FPV drones, and the reason being is because they are cheap, but they destroy a lot of expensive equipment, and they're very cheap, probably $500 and $1,000. I apologize in advance, but some of this footage will be censored. If you want the uncensored version, just go to my Rumble account to watch it. Link is in the description. It's completely free. Just you have to click the link and watch this uncensored because YouTube does not like the combat footage. So anyway, but these drones that the Ukrainians did not use, FPV drones were not used in the initial invasion. They are destroying these Russians like mercilessly that are trying to gain footholds in Kharkiv. It's one thing that you have towns and cities like in Bakhmut, Avdiivka, that even though you're getting attacked by FPV drones, you kind of have a shelter, you kind of have a home base. These guys don't have that. They're trying to create that, and these FPV drones are giving them a very rough time in trying to create it. And some people may argue, yeah, but they've taken 11, 12 villages. Yeah, but these villages were never intended by the Ukrainians to be the first line of defense. These villages are buffer zones. No small general is going to position his men literally a couple yards away from the enemy because the border is literally right there. Nobody's going to do that. Russia has a buffer zone. Ukraine has a buffer zone in their land. That's why when the Ukrainians did the border incursions, they did make significant ground. Well, it was a free Russian legion. They did make significant ground. However, they were eventually pushed back because the ground was not protected by the Russians at that point, because the Russians aren't going to put their men that close to the border. They need some cover. They need a buffer zone. And this buffer zone is working well for the Ukrainians because it is destroying a lot of the Russian soldiers and equipment by just using their FPV drones and their artillery. Over here we see a battle between Russian and Ukrainian soldiers in Kharkiv. I'm just going to turn it up for a little bit so you guys can get the intensity of the battle. So as you guys can hear, there's a lot of intense fighting going on. Unfortunately, it seems like the Ukrainians were forced to withdraw from this position because the Russians are currently occupying this area, confirmed by this video by the Freedom of Russian Legion, which is a BTR, I believe, attacking Russian positions. And again, the Russians or Ukrainians are not going to be firing on their guys, so this place is controlled by the Russians, unfortunately. Now, moving over here, and this is a thing that kind of worries me, we see Ukrainian reinforcements coming to Kharkiv, and honestly, I really hope that the Ukrainians do not get fooled by this. If this is a Russian attempt to fool the Ukrainians and to get Ukrainians to send a lot of reinforcements to Kharkiv, just to use that and exploit a breakthrough near Avdiivka or Bakhmut or Robotne. Honestly, I think the Ukrainian command has thought of that, and it could be what the Russians are doing. However, I hope the Ukrainians are not just throwing reinforcements here and literally falling for this Russian trap, if that's what it is. Again, it's not confirmed that this is a Russian trap. This could be Russians trying to make a buffer zone between the Ukrainians so they will stop bombing Belgorod. However, it could be that the Russians are doing this just as a huge, basically, trick to trick the Ukrainians. Speaking of bombing Belgorod, the Ukrainians continue to do so every day ever since the start of this attack. So we can see both sides bombing each other, both sides using drones. Over here, the Russians all trying to make some gains. We can see a convoy of Russian vehicles, around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 vehicles getting destroyed by FPV drones, by artillery, by cluster munitions. Again, unfortunately, this is going to be censored for my YouTube audience. However, the Russians all destroyed completely. The whole convoy is destroyed. The troops are destroyed. The tanks are destroyed. The BTRs, everything is destroyed. Moving over here, we see another attempted attack by the Russians. It gets hit by several FPV drones. I don't know if the tank ends up surviving this attack. However, it did get hit by a lot of FPV drones. I don't know if it ended up surviving. It seemed like it did end up surviving, and it retreated back to its positions after shelling the Ukrainians for a little bit. So now moving over here to this area, Bohdanovka, this town right by Bakhmut that the Russians captured, then I believe the Ukrainians recaptured in their 2023 counteroffensive. Now the Russians have again. And this is a video of Ukrainians fighting. They're doing a counterattack. I don't think this is to retake Bohdanovka because it really serves the Ukrainians no purpose at this time. This is just, I believe, to maintain the buffer zone between the Russians and the Ukrainians and Chasiv. Now moving over here to Avdiivka area, and once again we see how the drones really kind of rule the battlefield. It's very scary to think that FPV drones could be watching you wherever you go. As we can see, a large amount of Russians end up moving in this building. There's about 20 plus Russians, not in this group, but there are separate groups going in one at a time, just going into this building. And then you see out of the corner, you see a FPV drone. You'll see this very soon, very shortly. You see a FPV drone kind of come and destroy the building. That's a FPV drone. It goes through and massive explosion. Unfortunately for those men, 9 times out of 10, all those men are killed. And that's the effectiveness of an FPV drone. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, no matter what side you side on in this war, in this conflict, they're still humans, and it's still sad to see any human die, especially because of politics and corruption and stuff like that. However, now we see that the Russians are losing more tanks and BTRs just all across this line. This is what I said when Russia initially made their breakthrough. Because of this breakthrough, they did stretch their logistic line, so it does give Ukrainian drones a longer chance to hit the Russians for them while they're going to the front lines, while the Russians are going to the front lines. Since the front line has expanded, it's going to take the Russians longer to get there, and it gives the Ukrainians more chance to strike them with the drones. However, the Russians are not the only ones losing vehicles. As we see, a destroyed or abandoned Ukrainian Leopard tank ends up getting destroyed by what appears to be a Russian drone. So both sides are losing tanks, vehicles. Both sides are sustaining losses. Attacks are going all throughout the front lines. We see that an explosion over here deep in Luhansk, so it could have been ATACMS, it could have been something else. We'll wait for the Ukrainians to confirm what that was. Again, also Sumy direction, massive artillery according to some people, and this could be dangerous for the Ukrainians because if they open this front, the Russians open this front too, that's really going to stretch the Ukrainians very thin. In my opinion, I think the Ukrainians have done a lot of great things in this war. However, one of their major mistakes was not listening to Zaluzhny when he said he needed the 500,000 men. Now they're trying to do it, but I think it could be too late. And now we need to talk about, after the front line news, the replacement of Shoigu. Now, a lot of people are saying he doesn't have experience. He's a he's into finances, he's into economy. Why is he being appointed to the leader of the MOD? Well, from what I've read about dude, he actually seems pretty solid. He may not be the best general because he never was one. I don't believe he ever served in the military unless it was conscription. And however, one of the things that plagued the Russians and that the Ukrainians have been able to use to their advantage, and not saying the Ukrainians don't suffer from this, is extreme corruption. Russia is extremely corrupt. Their military is extremely corrupt. Millions of dollars supposed to go to tanks, equipment, vehicles will go to Shoigu, Grasnikov, and the Russian chief of command because they're just trying to get some money. They're trying to buy new houses, buy new mansions, cars, and whatever they want. And that's something that has plagued the Russians and has been a massive advantage for the Ukrainians. When we first came in, when the battle first started, you saw the Russians using A-Coltons instead of armor because they were not given that when they were sent into Ukraine. However, this man, if he wants to fight corruption, and Putin's like, okay, we're screwing up too bad, we need to fight corruption, we need to actually end this, and this man comes in, he's not corrupt like Shoigu. Every politician is corrupt, but he's not taking the millions of dollars that's supposed to go in the military and putting it into his own pockets. That could be an issue for Ukraine. Obviously, it takes years, even decades, to stop being corrupt when you're so entrenched in it like former Soviet nations are. However, that could be a problem for Ukraine because the major reason Ukraine has seen so much success and that the Russians have seen a lot of losses, like Kharkiv counteroffensive Kherson, and even to this day, a lot of vehicles being destroyed, over 300 vehicles being destroyed from Novomikhailivka, which is a 4-kilometer village, is corruption, incompetence, and stupidity. And if Russia can fix that, then they can be a big problem to Ukraine in the present and the West in the future. Anyway, guys, thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. Bye.